Hello, welcome to my sanctuary. In Erin Meyer's article, Navigating the Cultural Minefield, she says that the truth is that culture is too complex to be measured meaningfully along just one or two dimensions. This reminds me of a time that I went to South Africa to work for 6 months, parts of which were absolutely disastrous because of my lack of experience. I couldn't measure the cultural complexities accurately, and I failed in some regard. As mentioned in a previous entry, in 2014, I worked for Centennial College's Global Education Department and received a travel bursary to spend 2 semesters in Cape Town. This was super exciting because that's where all my family live, and I hadn't seen them in 18 years. My placement was at a beautiful spa resort in Gordons Bay, about 45 minutes west of Cape Town, called Celtic Manor. Gordons Bay is a predominantly white seaside vacation village. It's where the really wealthy live, like you'll see the mansions and stuff there, and it's absolutely breathtaking. I've included some pics for you to see where I stayed in the whole Gordons Bay area, well, to get an idea of it. A lot of European visitors would frequent the spa with a mix of local white South Africans. It was rare but nice for me to see colored people enjoying the spa, although no black people ever came as guests. They were the cooks and the cleaners, but never guests. Pretty typical. First, the owner seemed amazing. She would invite me for dinner, give me bottles of wine, and even took me on a boat ride with her and her husband. But things went sour pretty quickly. There was a number of problems leading up to this, but to make a long story short, on my days off, I was working as a front desk manager and given 3 to 4 days and like chunks of time off to visit my family in Cape Town. So the 3 to 4 days I was off, I was in Cape Town, and then the 4 to 5 days that I was on, I was there in Gordons Bay. I would often have my family pick me up and drop me off, and on one day, I was leaving the spa. The owner told me not to come back in my scheduled 3 days' time. She said not to return until my dad left the country, and that was in 9 days. It was surprising as this was completely out of left field. She said that it was for me to spend quality time with my dad and really enjoy his last few days and not have to worry about coming back to work, but her body language and demeanor told me a completely different story. So during that time off, she called and told me not to return at all. And there you go. She said that it was not working out. I was so confused, angry, of course, and completely devastated, embarrassed. Like, what was I going to tell my family about this? I reported to all of my shifts, did my work well. I was friendly and helpful to guests. I even received commendations from guests and a gift from one party that actually stayed there. I couldn't figure out what I did wrong. This was 6 weeks into my 6-month stay. And even though my family lives there, they didn't have space to house me for a whole 4.5 months. I had nowhere to live and nowhere to work. And what was I going to do? I went through panic for a few days until my uncle connected me with a friend of his who was a director for Shawco, a 70-year-old student-run not-for-profit through the University of Cape Town. I was able to negotiate a marketing position in the International Education Department and free lodging, which is what I had at the spa. It was a miracle. I was so elated and thankful that I had a new job and a place to live again. It seemed that it was even better than the last. It was such a great opportunity because it allowed for me to showcase and practice my new graphic design skills that I learned at my program at Centennial College and employ the marketing communication skills that I had acquired over the course of my career. The Shawco House, which lodged international students, was also right in Cape Town, so I didn't have to beg for rides anymore. I could just take one bus straight to my grandma's house, who, although dead now, the house still serves as the headquarters for all the family. You sit there long enough, basically everybody rotates through. My dad's 2 sisters live there, and the younger one has a family, and her 2 daughters are 2 of my favorite female cousins. We just have a blast together. It was also right around the corner of my love interest, who 2 years later became Jade's dad. seemed like a perfect fit, and I did so much for the company in the next 6 weeks. I did branding, market research for their Shockoe house, wrote and designed a newsletter, designed a flyer, a new webpage, photo and video shoots. I hosted a successful open house to showcase the Shockoe residents to other international agencies in Cape Town. I worked day and night for those people. But for the first time in my career, I was really thoroughly enjoying my work. I believed in the organization, which helped as well. The work that they did was phenomenal. They ran after-school programs for impoverished and at-risk youth in the townships, in the poorest townships of Cape Town. So these places are so dangerous, crime and gang infested, and kids are in danger just walking to and from school. So the programs that Shockoe ran keeps them on their school campus, and it's all fun, games, music, and then some educational programs, reading, writing, and it goes right from the youngest up until the end of high school, where they start doing pre-university programs, getting kids ready to apply for college and get into college. And basically, if you continue on the path of through Shockoe, taking the kids out of these abusive homes for the most part, away from the gangs, away from all the stuff that was happening around them, and keeping them in that trajectory straight into university. It was just amazing, the things that they were doing. I did like the director. I liked the two other people that I worked with in the department. They thought so much of me is that they started to talk to me about continuing my contract, extending me. They asked me to get a quote from the airline, which I did, and the response I received was absolutely shocking. I was told that due to restructuring, they were terminating my contract, and they were not able to keep me on at all. So I responded in surprise and told the director all of the plans that I had to achieve certain goals in line with Shockoe objectives. What I wanted to do was be a liaison between Centennial College, my college, and Shockoe, so we could send more Canadian students through their programs, staying in the Shockoe residence. And that's what I was hired to do, is to get people, get the beds filled. And I had just scraped the surface of the work that I wanted to do, and upon explaining all of this to her, she said that I was pressuring her. And she also went back at that point to my uncle and told him that I refused to leave the Shockoe house, and I was causing her all sorts of stress. So the negative talk spread throughout my whole family and overshadowed all of the great work that I did for the organization. Once again, I was totally perplexed. What did I do wrong? Both of these experiences left me feeling like an outcast, that I didn't understand the culture or the nuances of how people did business in South Africa. Upon reflection, I realized that the first job, the owner was racist, plain and simple. She told me that there were just too many people coming and going, and that was in reference to my family picking me up and dropping me off. But this is a guest house. People are constantly coming and going. But here's the difference. With my family, it's people of color coming and going. She didn't trust colored people. She didn't expect a student from Canada to be colored and to have familial roots in the area. Shortly after, she started saying that items were missing from in and around the guest house, and she started accusing the black cleaning ladies of stealing. It was so horrible, those poor ladies. And the worst part is, she was in the process of selling the place and moving stuff into storage. She was misplacing the items herself and turning around and accusing them of theft. It was absolutely outrageous, but a truth that I learned while living and working in South Africa is that racism is alive and well. Whites still hold the wealth and privilege, and although the black staff was completely innocent, it was a very real possibility that this crazy old white lady could send someone, a black someone, to jail for a crime they didn't commit. In the second instance, I believe that my family played a role in my demise. They learned that my dad didn't approve of my relationship And if you remember, the director was a friend of my uncle's, my dad's sister's husband. I think my dad told his sister that he didn't want me extending my stay and thus furthering my relationship. So she told her husband to influence his friend, the director of Shako, to pull the plug on my contract, regardless of the quality of my work. Oh my God, drama, 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 right? In this case, I felt like a puppet, with a grand puppeteer being not the one and only daddy of the year, who was pulling all the strings in the background all the way from Toronto. I never did confirm this theory, but knowing my family and how influential my dad is, it seemed like the only viable explanation of events, because otherwise it just didn't make any sense. In both scenarios, external influences took over and brought about my downfall. But upon reflection, was there anything that I could have done differently that would have changed the outcome? That brings us to the topic of mindfulness. Mindfulness teaches us that repeated experiences sculpt our brains. This experience caused me so much anxiety and doubt in myself and my abilities. Is there anything positive at all that I could take from this? Is there anything that being mindful can teach me that can make me a better intercultural communicator? In the first instance, I could have taken time in my evenings alone to reflect on the behaviors of the people around me, specifically the owners. I'm sure if I was more mindful, I could have picked up on the nonverbal cues that I didn't see at the time. I could have preempted my termination by organizing my rides to drop me off and pick me up outside of the property gates. Even though unfair, this is a reality in South Africa. The second example poses more complex issues, behind-the-scene influences that I had no idea about. I think that mindfulness would have helped me better respond to the termination. Someone called me reactive once, and I can pledge now to work on my reactions in my study of mindfulness. I like to be a person where very little can bother me, that I'm no longer a stimulus response animal, that I no longer have to get angry, depressed, or upset at every bad thing that happens. Mindfulness teaches that I do not have to suffer from the negatives, that I can be calm and take proper action to succeed in something new. And something new did come along. I ended my time in South Africa working side by side with my love as a special events coordinator with Mahudi Wines, the only Black-owned wine farm in South Africa. It's a pretty big deal. We developed Mahudi Wines Wine Club website and flyers. I planned and hosted a champagne and wine tasting event that was a huge success. We ended up selling tons of cases of the wine, along with garnering new clients for the company. I've included some pics to show you of the event. Going forward, I plan to use mindfulness as a stress reduction tool. Lord knows I need it. I'll have to learn how to do it, but luckily there are many online learning platforms that focus on this, including one through HealthLink BC. Finally, I believe that learning the key to mindfulness will teach me to be in control of my mind so that my mind doesn't control me. And I think this could be the foundation of successful intercultural communications. This concludes my third journal entry. Thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing me to make these connections. And thanks always to the Great Spirit that makes all things possible. Until next time, be well, my friends.